Hello and good evening, and welcome back to the Savvy Street Show again. I'm joined by my usual co host, Roger Bissell, who most of you know is a writer, musician, and part time philosopher as well. And he's going to introduce our special guest for tonight. Welcome to the show, Roger.
Well, thank you, Vinay. Our guest this evening or morning or whenever you're watching this is Nicolas Cachanosky. He's the director of the Center for Free Enterprise at the University of Texas at El Paso. And he is an associate professor of economics and finance. And he was eminently qualified to be the co-author of Argentina's President Javier Milei's proposal to dollarize the peso. I believe that's a good way to say it. And we know that President Milei has captured the imagination of people around the world with his libertarian proposals. And some of the excitement has been very positive, and there's been some people who weren't so positive, but were excited or agitated nonetheless. So, Dr. Kakanowski, would you like to kind of begin by giving us a brief sketch of what has happened so far since President Milei has taken office? What kind of success has he had? Obstacles? What sort of success do you expect and hope for during his term in office?
Yes, of course. And let me, thank you for your invitation and for the audience to listen to us. Well, Milei has been in the government for, I think, barely 3 months. So he's still very new. He's still going through what is usually called, the honeymoon of a new government. He got some good results in sense of, controlling social protests by strong unions and different organizations. So now you can, drive your car and work peacefully in Argentina without being afraid that a strike will just ruin your day. Now, on the economic front, his results has been mixed, and there's still a big question mark of what's going to happen in the next few months. He has a transitory stabilization plan that some economists think is not sustainable in the long run. So the big question is what it is leading to and for how long it can last before they have to do a change. So given that the alternative was to continue with the Kirchneristas, Milei's government is an improvement. I don't think that's up to discussion. I think the question that most people have is how much success he will be able to have, especially as we may talk in a few minutes. He doesn't have a lot of political muscle in Congress to pass his reforms. So everything he wants to do, he has to negotiate with the same people that he wants to, go against. So it's not an easy task.
That brings me to our second question of the day. How far is he constrained by a lack of majority in both houses? And I believe there are something like 22 provinces in Argentina, and the provincial governors are Peronist, so to speak, or leftist. How much do they matter? And
Well, I think he's finding out that they matter more than he thought. I'm sure more than he wanted. So there were three main, if you want, political or policies that he was putting forward. One was the idea of dollarization and closing down the central bank as soon as possible. That did not happen. So that's on the bench, worst case scenario. The second one was what in Argentina is called a necessity and urgency decree. It's something like an executive order in the US. And there are some, constitutional limits under which condition a president may be allowed to issue one of these decrees. And it had many chapters, if you want, many articles, but the courts, the justice, put a stop on some of them. And that became a problem because now it was only a partial decree that was moving forward. And later on, the Senate got enough votes to cancel this decree. And the third one is his omnibus law, which was a huge law with a lot of reforms, and that basically was quashed and is back to square zero. So the three main policy reforms that he was presenting, these are going to be foundational for the country. It's going to be a game changer. All three of them didn't move forward. As of now, he hadn't passed any single law, and he's trying to navigate this restriction. So he has a big problem in the sense that in Congress, he doesn't have representatives from his party. So to get the vote, he has no option but to negotiate with other parties. And one of Milei's characteristical behavior is that he's a very antagonistic and very dismissive of his opposition. So at the same time I'm insulting you, I'm trying to get you vote for me. And now this is becoming a problem for him, right? We may like, that he goes to a conference and he can mention Hayek, Mises, and so on, but as a president, he needs to be able to pass these reforms. And so far, it's been challenging.
Wow. You have mentioned some of the opposition that he has faced, and you also mentioned the labor unions. I'd like to ask you about the news media in Argentina and in the Spanish-speaking world in general. As you have seen it, do you think that they are being fair to him, or is there just a real spectrum of opinion, pro and con, like we have in the United States for our politicians? It just seems to be a cacophony of voices going back and forth, depending upon who they like or don't like. Tell us about that.
In Argentina, like in many countries, different media channels may have different preferences, if you want. I think my sense is that in Argentina, they are less explicit or obvious as there might be some media channels in the US. So you're going to have some spectrum. Now, broadly speaking, my sense, at least so far, is that the media has been fairly fair to Milei. Now, in some occasions, there will be some misrepresentation of something that Milei is saying or pushing forward and so on. And I want to be fair here. It's also the case that Milei is not always clear on what he says. He changes his mind very frequently. So that invites to, honest mistakes on the other side as well. So sometimes it's a mistake. Sometimes maybe like I don't like him so much, I'm going to misrepresent what he's doing. So, for example, there was a news title today that if Milei wants to present again the omnibus law to Congress. And so the title says, if the Congress doesn't approve, then Milei will have to apply a retroactive taxation. So I need to reimpose a tax and tax you on previous year instead of moving forward. Now, the way this is written gives the impression that that's what Milei wants to do. But actually, what the government is trying to say is, if this law doesn't pass, then I have a legal mandate to retroactively collect taxes from what the previous government did. But the way it was presented was, invites to the other interpretation, that it was a Milei intention to collect taxes retroactively. So that might be an example where the media is not being totally fair to him. But sometimes he is confusing.
I see.
I mean, in terms of confusing, I'm surprised in a way, because when we say we want to get rid of a central bank, we want to go typically to a gold-backed currency, get rid of fiat currency, get rid of all monetary policy and all that, and get rid of a central bank. To me, the dollarization seems like you're hitching your wagon from a central bank that gives you 100%, 200% inflation in Argentina to the Federal Reserve in the United States, which gives you 10% inflation. So, but you're not really getting rid of fiat currency and central banking. So is this dollarization like an interim step towards, getting rid of central banking altogether, or something else?
I don't think that's the end game of dollarization, at least the way that we work this proposal. The idea of dollarization is that, for better or worse, the US dollar is a world reserve currency. So Argentina can connect to the world reserve currency network. Argentine debt is denominated in US dollars. So if the dollar becomes your legal tender currency, then you avoid the currency mismatch between your tax revenues and what you have to pay. So you eliminate a lot of problems. The other issue is that Argentines already save in dollars and they think in dollars. So they're already standing in dollars. This is not about imposing the dollars to the Argentines. It's letting them have the freedom to use the currency they decide. Now, most of the discussion about dollarization implicitly takes the position that dollarization is an endgame. You dollarize and that's it. And that can be the case. For instance, Ecuador has been dollarized for 20 years, El Salvador for 20 years, Panama has been dollarized for more than 100 years. But other countries, after they dollarize, they de-dollarize. So one option is that dollarization can be that bridge, that channel, that opening that door that allows you to get into a different monetary regime that you prefer over dollarization, that without dollarizing and bringing price stability and fixing your economy, you won't be able to get to that regime. So dollarization doesn't have to be an end game. It can be what you need to get to something else. And there can be a very long discussion of what that something else should be or could be. But my point here is that I think it's a mistake to think of dollarization as it's the end game and that's it.
Right. There's been a lot of turbulence in the I guess you'd say in the currency world. Recently, was it Russia, China, India, maybe Brazil? Some other countries have joined together and decoupled from the U.S. dollar. I guess you'd call that a kind of de-dollarizing. They have thrown aside what they call the petrodollar, and I see that by Argentina connecting to the dollar like this, well, it's basically just recognizing what the citizens have already strongly preferred to hold dollars. It's kind of it's almost like some people buying gold. It's like a safer place to have their wealth. So you're saying that the dollarization is not necessarily the last stop, the end game, but to me, it's just a refreshing sign at this point in time, because so much of the rest of the world, not so much, but those big countries, they have kind of moved in another direction. And do you have any comment about that in relation to Argentina's future plans or possible plans?
Yeah, 2 points. One is that, one feature of money is that it's what economists call a network good. It's like, like social media. The more actors are connected to this network, the more utility I get from being in this network. So it's not that easy to say, I'm going to stop using the US dollar and that will be a threat to the US dollar worldwide. So I don't think that we're at the point where we need to be really worried about the US dollar losing its world, relevance, status, if you want. On the other side, dollarization doesn't mean that Argentines are not allowed to save, use, or contract in different currencies. If you're in Argentina and you want to have a bank deposit in Brazilian reals, you are free to do so. You want to sign a contract in euros, you are free to do so. The point is that you need a currency with a legal tender status. And that will be the US dollar, because that's where Argentina is standing today. So some of the confusion that I see in Argentina on this topic is that many economists, analysts, etc., they talk about dollarization versus currency competition.
Oh.
And I think that's confusing, because dollarization in itself also means currency competition. You are free to use any currency you want other than the peso that will be faded away. But that doesn't mean you don't have currency competition. So yes, you take the peso away, you are standing on the US dollar, I give you that platform. If then the market wants to move to another currency, free to do so.
Oh.
Okay. I mean, one other thing, as a co-author, professor of the dollarization proposal, you also wrote about the impact of, the Argentinian dollarization and the United States. Can you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, I was writing for the U.S. audience, and I was thinking why the U.S. will take any interest on this. So what will happen to the U.S. if Argentina dollarizes? Because to dollarize, Argentina or no country, they don't have to ask any permission to the U.S., the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, no one. They can just do it by themselves. I mean, the U.S. may oppose, but Argentina can do it by themselves. But what are three potential indirect, and I think are beneficial for the U.S. if Argentina dollarizes? One is that even if in today Argentina you have a high demand of dollars, by formalizing what today is a de facto dollarized country, you can increase the demand for US dollars in the region, which means the Federal Reserve can benefit from some extra seigniorage, which coincidentally comes at a time when the Federal Reserve is for the first time in its history making losses. Now, will this be a lot of money for the Federal Reserve? Maybe not, but in the margin, it will be beneficial for the Fed. Another two potential benefits, and this is more like a geopolitical issue. One is to change for the better, if you want, the so strong anti-U.S. sentiment that you have in Argentina. I think Argentina is the Latin America with the strongest anti-U.S. sentiment. Of course, every Argentine will save in dollars, eat in McDonald's, and go spend their vacations in Miami. But other than that, Argentina, for some reason, hates the US. So if that sentiment starts to change, the international diplomacy between the US government and Argentina can improve, and Argentina and the US can be in better political relationships. So at least for a geopolitical point of view, for the US government, that would be beneficial, having like a more friendly nation in South America. The third reason relates to the previous point. As you have China and these countries trying to push their currencies in the world reserve market, if Argentina dollarizes, that's a very large economy in South America, taking the sure position that their currency is the US dollar. So that can be a benefit from the US government point of view of having someone in Latin America having a more robust presence with the dollar as the world reserve currency. And these, by the way, these benefits to the U.S. are zero cost for the U.S.
An article yesterday that I think President Milei just got into politics very recently. And so I'm curious to know, at what point did he decide that in order to help solve Argentina's problems, it wasn't enough simply to be a teacher, a professor, lecturer, but that he would have to really get into the political process and try to work that way? At what point did this happen?
I'm honestly not sure. Milei has been rising in the Argentine, I don't know how to call it, public opinion market, if you want, for some time now. He started to become prominent by going to some TV media shows, prime times.
Yep.
His mannerism, his personality, his passion, if you want, that captured a lot of attention. He started to become very popular in social media platforms. I don't know exactly how he decided to join the political world, but he's not the only, if you want the term, free market thinker that did this. A few years back, there was something called the Libertarian Party in Argentina that only existed for a few years. So there was some presence before this. And at the same time, give or take, that Milei was shown in the political world, other economists that have good eyes for free markets were also shown in the political world. Jose Luis Espert is a Congress member, and few others. So he wasn't the only one. I don't know what made him take that decision. I have no idea. I never spoke to him. Actually, in Twitter, X, or however it's called now, he blocks me, so I have no idea what he says. So I don't know what made that change, but his rise from being an outsider to president was like spectacular. It was, I think, 4 years maybe. Right? That's very hard to find. I know we have a few cases, but those are exceptional. They're not normal.
Three,
Now,
4 years.
what
Yeah, go on.
what Milei was able to capture, I mean, you have to remember something. Argentina is having high and rising inflation since 2007. Argentina economy has been stagnated, flatline since 2011. That's more than 10 years. So you have more than 10 years with stagflation. So think of the younger population that have all their future ahead of them, and all they see is despair.
Right.
When Cambiemos, the opposition, was government, their economy blew up, there was a crisis, and they stepped down with more inflation than they got when they assumed, and the Kirchneristas came back. So for a large part of the population, they don't see a solution other than outside Argentine politics. And Milei was able very efficiently, clearly, to capture those votes.
I was intrigued by an earlier statement you made, Professor, about Millet being confusing to the media. And I thought, at least in terms of principles, it seemed to me that he's a kind of classic Austrian economist. He's even seemingly wedded philosophically to anarcho-capitalism, so that he should be very clear, but he apparently isn't. And so I want to roll two, three questions into one about what is he really like, and has he been? Some of the media have been comparing him with Donald Trump or Wilders in the Netherlands, Geert Wilders, and is he anti-immigration or like Wilders? Uh, what's the immigration policy in Argentina, and is he going to change it?
So going to the first point, you need to keep in mind that the median voter may not be very familiar with much of economics, let alone different school of thought. So one example, at some point he's talking about having a market of, organ donation. I have an extra kidney, and instead of just donate it to whoever gets it, why not have a market? I mean, if you follow economic discussion, these topics have been discussed for many years by very important economists. Recent Nobel Prize winners won the Nobel Prize by creating what will be a market, kind of a market for this type of problems, how to match these donations. But the way he talks about this gives the impression, for those who don't know these debates in economics, that he wants to implement tomorrow like a crazy free market about I'm gonna force you to sell your kidney. So the way he explains things, that for him, people that understand these topics, seems to be, I know what he means. For the public at large, it's going to be confusing. Right? Now, that goes to like principal ideas. Then you have policy proposals. One day he says he wants to dollarize. Another day he says he wants to have currency competition. Another day he says that he wants to have a law against having the central bank finance the treasury, which makes you wonder, then you're not going to dollarize? Because you're going to dollarize, what's the point of that law? So the way he communicates, unless you can navigate what he's trying to say, I think my impression is that invites to confusion. In terms of immigration, that's not a big issue in Argentina like it's in some European countries and the US. So that's not an issue in Argentina. So I don't imagine that changing immigration laws will be a priority for this government or any other government. Where there may be issues is when some governments use migrants for political reasons. So I'm gonna make it easy for you to have a resident if you vote for me. That kind of problems. But that's different than saying immigration is good or bad for the economy or something like that. So it's really not a big issue in Argentina, immigration.
You mentioned earlier the point that because he has a minority, his party is a minority party in the government. That so far he has not gotten approval for some of his plans, and if if he doesn't, then it's going to revert back to he'll have to do some what you call retroactive taxes, if I have that right. And I think that when we talk about leverage, sometimes we forget about the people. You know, we think about, well, there's the opposition, we'll have to negotiate, or there's the media, we'll have to convince the media this is good. But I think in the United States, we're finding that things have reached such a point that there's kind of a groundswell of public opinion. You can look at some of the polls on issues and see that the public has finally had enough and they won't change. And I think that part of the leverage that President Milei might have in this, particularly the taxation issue, is if he says, well, if they're not going to go along with me, your representative doesn't go along with me, then I'm going to have to, by law, have to raise your taxes from last year. And so maybe, what do you think about the factor of the public opinion and the public support? Do you think that that could pressure the other parties to be more cooperative?
I think you are mostly right. And if you see Milei's behavior, that's the card he's playing. He's trying to have the opposition, have to take the spotlight that they're going against the median voter wishes or the public wishes.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to play. But if we look at the facts, that doesn't seem to be strong enough, right? Because he's not being able to pass these reforms in Congress. So the question is, okay, he's trying this again with these new strategies. Is this time going to work? We don't know for sure, because now we have instances that prove that it didn't work before. And that's part of the uncertainty surrounding Milei's economic plan. Milei promised with dollarization to cut down inflation fast. That's not happening. So another question is, for how long will the public support Milei? Because what the public wants is a change in the economic situation and social situation in Argentina. It's not that the public has heartfully embraced libertarian ideas. That's the rhetoric in Milei's campaign. The public wants change. They want to fix this problem. It's not the public is not thinking about I'm like a true Hayekian or something like that.
Yeah.
So if the social patience runs away, that can be dangerous as well for the free market ideas in Argentina, because now you have one person that is presented as the free market guy, and he cannot deliver that contain the free market ideas, not just himself.
Interesting. You yourself wrote about the two Mileis, and when Milei got elected and he did this speech to the World Economic Forum, I remember just joyfully clapping and applauding as though I was actually in the audience. I wasn't, because it's been a very, very long time we've ever had what I thought was a very principled politician from an objectivist or a libertarian perspective. The US used to have Ron Paul, for instance. It's a long time between drinks. But your suggestion that Milei may even be a bit of a populist was a bit of a concern to me. Can you elaborate on that? Is he a populist, a Peronist in disguise, or is he really principled and just shackled by a lack of majority in Congress?
So maybe the first step is to try to define what we mean by a populist person or a populist leader or a populist government. If you read the work on populism, there is always the same challenge: how you define populism. And like the saying goes, is that you cannot define it, but when you see it, you know it. So there are some distinctive characteristics, and one of them is that the populist leader creates a fracture, a social fracture between us, who are the good and have the high moral ground, and the others who are the evil, so they have the lower moral ground. Additionally, I'm the true, only real representative of us. Now, I'm the guy, and I have a direct mandate from us. And because the others are evil, I don't have to follow the rules. I have the moral mandate, the moral right to squash them. That's a typical behavior of a populist leader. So every time I see a president from any ideological spectrum creating that kind of division, my populist antennas are like a little crazy.
Yeah.
If you look at Milei, all his behavior since since he was starting until today, it's just that. It's always, you are the evil, you are the corrupt, you are the thieves, you are the liars. And we may agree with a lot of the criticism and things he is saying about the other side, but he's a president now. And even if if you think, ideally there shouldn't be a government, the fact today is that you do have a government, right? And especially when he's a president, how you behave is also a message. So one example I've been giving recently, when he had his presidential inauguration, for the audience, the Argentine Constitution was conceived following the US Constitution. That's why both countries' constitutions are so similar. So the way this works, when a president gets inaugurated and he becomes president, he delivers a speech to the Congress. Why the Congress? Because the Congress are the representatives of the people, right? I cannot speak to the people directly, so I had to speak through Congress as a respect to the voters. So what he does is he steps out of Congress, he gives his back to Congress and speaks to the plaza, right? Directly to the people there. And the first reaction may be, yes, this Congress, look at the mess he's done to Argentina, they deserve it, and all this like kind of payback emotion. But what he's doing is degrading the legislative power. And that made the message, the message between the lines of I speak directly to the public, and I give my back to Congress, the underlying message can be very dangerous. Right? That's the kind of behavior that you see in Perón, in Evo Morales, in all these guys. Now, he may not be a lefty. That doesn't mean he's not a populist. So if I look at him objectively, I see too many populist behaviors that are uncomfortable to me. And that's something that even for everyone who likes Milei need to be aware of, those things. We cannot be blind to the things that we don't like. He's a politician now. So all the problems of the political world, he's not immune to that. Public choice applies as much to him as it does to the Peronists, right?
And a respect for the institutions that elected him and that he needs, and a respect for the Constitution applies to him as much as anyone else.
Yeah, and we can agree laws are wrong, Constitution has its problems, but if you're going to start your presidency, with that, Argentina needs a serious institutional shock. And the problem I see with that presidential address, and the same with when Macri and Cambiemos took office, was like being oblivious to the institutional problem. So when Macri became president, they celebrated dancing, pop music in the balcony of the Casa Rosada, what would be like the White House in the US.
Yeah.
I know you're celebrating, it's all fine. You need to give an institutional shock, and the first thing you do is go and dance like crazy, take off your ties, and so on. And the message you send is that this doesn't matter. Now we won. That's it. Right? So I worry about those messages because at the end of the day, those matter.
Well, it's worrisome for us here in this country too. In our process, which happens every 4 years, they will have the primary party elections, and they sound very hard-nosed, and then when they win the nomination, then they pivot to try to appeal to the broad public, and you wonder, is this the same person I heard several months ago? And that populist or that appeal to the broad public can be kind of deceptive. And we're going to hear our president talk tonight in his annual State of the Union message. And I wonder if he's going to be a unifying message bringer or if he's going to be divisive, because we're in rather chaotic times here, in case you haven't noticed.
Yes, I see that. But there is a key difference that sometimes it's easy to miss. You and I may agree in where we want to be, and we disagree how to get there. Right. Ideally, that would be a difference between one party and the other. We agree how we want the nation to be, but then we discuss and disagree how to get there, and we compromise, and we move slowly there, and so on. Difference is when in my State of the Union, my political behavior and so on is, I want to go to the right point, you are evil, you want to go to the bad point. Because now it becomes disrespectful between political members and people that feel more close to one party or the other. So if I'm a Democrat and you're a Republican, then it's not that we disagree how to get to a point. Now you became a bad person.
Yes,
And that opens, and the other way around, right?
Yeah.
And this opens the door to a lot of social problems.
Yes. Demonization. We hear a lot of demonization in the media, in the political sphere.
Anything else you want to add, Professor or Roger? Any new questions?
I'm enjoying it very much, and I can't think of anything else, but it's great to talk to you, Professor.
Thank you for having me, and I hope the audience enjoys the conversation as well.
Thank you for being with us. I'm sure the audience enjoyed it. And the whole world, especially the kind of objectivist libertarian world, is watching and hoping whatever his flaws and faults are, Milei gets his way and Argentina improves dramatically, because that will be a fantastic illustration for the whole world. Just like Venezuela is an illustration in the wrong direction, we want an excellent illustration in the right direction.
Right.
All right. Good night and good luck, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.